Welcome, everyone. I had a little snafu where I thought I was recording, and I'm going to introduce my very special guest, Dr. Elaine Wilson, who's going to help us learn how to sleep again, or at least give us some guidelines. So I'm really excited about Dr. Wilson because she's been a psychologist for 30 years, and half of that time has been spent exclusively working with insomnia and circadian rhythm sleep wake disorders. And
Let me just say hello. I'm glad to be here. Okay.
Yeah. And she's one of the 200 or so, the few psychologists in the country who are certified in behavioral sleep medicine. And her education and work experiences are so extensive in the subject of sleep, which is why I invited her here to interview, so that we could all learn a little bit more about how to sleep better, especially during this year of COVID, where I think the Wall Street Journal article stated from several research projects that 40% of the world's population has had sleep issues this year. So Dr. Wilson recently retired, so we're really lucky to have her here for this interview. Before I get started on the questions that I know all of you will want to know the answers to, I'm just going to go over a couple definitions that will be helpful. Insomnia is having trouble sleeping or staying asleep at least 3 times in a week, and it becomes insomnia or chronic insomnia when it lasts more than a month. Circadian rhythm sleep-wake disorder is a problem with our sleep timing. The circadian rhythm is our natural 24-hour rhythm that controls our sleep and other bodily functions. And sleep issues could be a combination of both of them or just one of them. So both of them are very important things to look at. So we're going to go into our first question. Welcome, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. Can I just add to your definition?
Please.
So when you say having trouble sleeping majority of nights, the trouble we're talking about is 30 minutes or more of lying in bed awake, whether it's the beginning, the middle, or the end of the night, and also combined with problems the next day. If you have no problems the next day, you don't have insomnia, no matter how good or bad you sleep.
That's very, very helpful for anyone who might be experiencing that to know. So to our first questions relating to insomnia, I guess sleeping, what are ways or precipitating factors or events that turn the definition, like I had a bad night of sleep or a couple bad nights, when does that turn into an insomnia issue? And I know for menopausal women, sometimes it's hormonally related.
Well, as you said, many people have insomnia symptoms. We only define it as insomnia given the definition that you gave and the little piece that I added onto it. But there are so many factors that get people stuck in a wave of not sleeping, basically. And some people have predisposition to sleep problems. You can tell by their family history, or they're very have a high arousal, and so they're more likely. But then there's always a precipitating factor, and in women there are some extra precipitating factors. In general, precipitating factors could be, medications you're on, medicine you take, medications you're on, health problems, mental health problems, and so on. But in women, we also have responsibilities. We also have hormonal issues during our lives, starting with menstruation, childbirth, and of course, we're going to talk a little bit about menopause. And you're asking, when does it become a problem? How does it become a problem? Well, sometimes all the things we do to make it better actually keep us stuck. So if it was just a day or two and you said, big deal, I'll sleep tomorrow, you might, and you're done with it. But if you say, I better stay in bed longer. I must get my 8 hours of sleep. I'm going to take sleep medications. A lot of things keep you stuck. Chasing sleep is part of this. And that is, I'll stay in bed longer. I'll take naps because I need my sleep. And what happens is doing that lightens your sleep and makes it more likely for you to have broken sleep, light sleep, non-restorative sleep. So that's a start. And keep going if you like.
Yeah, no, that's, I think the anxiety, I know, at least for me, this question, the anxiety of like, oh my God, the harm of what it could do makes you refocus even more on that you need sleep. And then it just becomes this vicious cycle. So I know.
Before you go on, a lot of the things that I do involve getting rid of all those extra things that you've done, including becoming anxious. We work on the anxiety as well, but keep you in bed less, keep you off sleep medications. And there's a number of things I do because the person is often running with their insomnia after a while.
Yes. And I wanted to find out your thoughts, I guess maybe more specifically on, sometimes people might self-medicate with taking melatonin. So thoughts on that, and also if a doctor prescribes sleep meds or even someone tries CBD. So these are just things that people might turn to before going to someone like you.
Yeah, I wish those things were panaceas. Really, none of them are. Melatonin has drawbacks. It's not well regulated. You don't know what you're getting. It's a hormone. No other hormone is over the counter, apparently, other than melatonin. And in other countries, it's by prescription. People take way too much. It's not a great sleeping pill. It probably will stop working. But the brain only produces 0.1 milligrams of melatonin each night. Why would you take 3, 5, 10 milligrams and overwhelm the system? It once in a while, not once in a while, more often than that, melatonin is good as a time shifter. And that is like a jet lag problem. Or someone who can't fall asleep, and then can't wake up in the morning. You might prescribe a small dose, and I'm talking less than a half a milligram, 2 hours before bedtime, temporarily. So it's not a great sleeping pill. I don't really know much about CBD, how that works. I do know about all these over-the-counter sleep medications aren't very good. I'm talking about a pain reliever that has this, what would it be like? Plus, considered a sleep medication. And we're talking about Benadryl, basically.
Oh, right. Some people do take that for sleep. Right.
Benadryl, like Tylenol PM,
yes.
Advil PM, they have Benadryl. And you could take Benadryl alone, and it might make you sleepy. It might have a paradoxical effect, too. And it often has a hangover effect, whether or not it helped you sleep, because it's in your system 22 hours. So there's a lot of drawbacks to those medications. Maybe they're worse than prescribed medications. I'm not sure. They're not necessarily better. And we could talk about prescribed medications too.
Actually, yes. I would love to. The most commonly prescribed, is it ambien?
It was. There's so many new ones all the time. Ambien was a very commonly prescribed one. And what I've noticed recently is doctors prescribe way too much of it. It was supposed to be a short-term medication. And for women, it's supposed to be 5 milligrams or less, or 5 milligrams, let's say. For men, it could be 10. And that's about 7 or 8 years ago, the FDA put that warning on Ambien because it has next day effects on people when you take more than 5, or the equivalent of the slow release. It's like 6.25 or something. And also has amnestic side effects. We're talking about sleep eating, sleep driving, and these are dose related. So
oh, wow.
So even if it's okay temporarily, it's not meant for long-term use. You weren't supposed to develop tolerance to Ambien, but you do. And then you might want to take more, or you'll say, my ambien stopped working. And with ambien, as with other sleep medications, Restorol and other things you take, if you stop precipitously, you don't sleep at all. There's this rebound insomnia that you get. So if someone is taking 10 milligrams, a woman, which she really shouldn't be, and she wants to go to 5, let's say, for now, you need to taper very slowly.
I think that's something that we don't know.
You may not, sorry, say again?
I think that's something not everyone knows. I can tell you for sure, at least from the doctor, when I asked my doctor, because he had prescribed 10, and it was you who mentioned that's a lot for a woman. When I asked him about how to taper, he's like, just don't take it every night. That was his only advice. And I think it's probably because doctors don't always, they're probably so busy with their daily practice, they might not always have the most current research.
Right. But as a psychologist, the same way I don't prescribe medications, I also can't tell you what your taper should be. Although I know the literature. So a taper isn't 10-0, 10-0. That's no taper. It could be 10-5, 10-5, until you get to 5. And you need almost any medication, psychoactive medication, you need to taper slowly.
So that's interesting, because I know for Ambien or any kind of sleep aid like that, people are often on it for years. So they develop, sometimes your body develops a tolerance for it. And then it's obviously people would prefer to sleep naturally, but are there any specific outside of wanting just to be sleeping naturally, negatives about being on sleep medication for years?
Well, again, it stops working. If it continues to work, you probably don't even need it. You'd need to taper slowly, and you'd realize you didn't need it. The hangover effect of a lot of them, even if it doesn't help you sleep, it's still in your system the next day. Mm-hmm. There are other classes of medication that have their own problems. Other ones like Restorol, which is benzodiazepine. There's a lot of those, which were supplanted by Ambien. In the elderly, it could be related to falls when they get out of bed at night. There's issues with all of them. And I don't think it's terrible, but it's not going to be the answer. Let's say you took Ambien every day of your life. And Ambien's even old now. There have been a lot of medications since Ambien, but I'm not aware of any of them that are great. They're trying to go through different systems.
I gotcha. Yeah.
There are some that are melatonin-like. There are some that get into a different system of your brain. Offhand, I can't think of the name of the one that's pretty popular now. But they don't work great. And all the sleep groups who would use medication say you deserve a trial of CBTi before even attempting these medications. So this is the treatment of choice, because really it has no drawbacks if it works.
Which is going to lead me to my next question for you: what are some of the top techniques that you use, that since it's like going to be all non-drug related, to treat insomnia?
Well, developed in the last 40 years, I would say, CBTi is an evidence-based, and I have to go through that term because evidence-based is a very important term, evidence-based therapy, and it's a package of different techniques. And if I told you the techniques, which I will, it's not just, oh, do that, do that, do that, and you'll be all set. Often you'll need a lot of help with this. And there's different levels of getting this kind of help. So the lowest level, and doctors send patients to me for this, is trivial, and that's called sleep hygiene, like sleep or dental hygiene. Good habits, make sure your room is cool, quiet, and dark. Don't drink alcohol. That's an important one. Close to bedtime. Don't exercise in the last hour or two before bedtime, but do exercise 3 or 4 hours before bedtime, or really 4 or 5 hours before bedtime. And I add to it getting the light and dark into your life. And that is getting plenty of light during the day and making sure things are dark at night. And we'll go through that too. And that is, if you're getting lots of screen time at night, it's giving your brain the wrong signals, and it's actually turning off the melatonin in your brain. And we want melatonin to start flowing a few hours before bedtime and to stay high all night. So if I shine a bright light in your eyes, it could mess up your whole schedule. So that's one of the things. But doctors send patients to me for sleep hygiene, and that's not it. That's a very minor part. So the two main techniques are, and you have to either work with someone or a program, and we could talk about that too. It could be an online program for sleep restriction. And I alluded before to the idea that is, if you spend too much time in bed, your sleep gets worse. It just gets fragmented. So sleep restriction, we have to mathematically figure out based on how much you sleep. So you have to do a sleep log to figure this out. So you basically every night or every morning, mostly, you fill out this sleep log. And the idea is based on the amount of time you sleep. Let's say you only sleep 6 hours a night on average. Then you would spend 6 hours or a little bit more in bed every night, temporarily. So how do you figure this out? You start with what time do you need to get up, and you fix that. So I need to get up at 7 every morning, to do what I have to do. Or I need to get up at 7 most of the mornings, I keep saying night. And so we set 7 every day, including weekends as your wake up time. And then you calculate back. So for the first few nights, you might go to sleep at 1 o'clock, 1 a.m. I never give a person less than 6 hours in bed. And as the sleep starts to fill that space, it's like stuffing sleep in a box, and gets better, then you expand it on the go to bed side. Okay, something that just me telling you that most people are not going to be able to do that on their own. Maybe a book, maybe an online program, especially a sleep therapist. So that's technique number 1. And as time goes by, your sleep gets stronger, more consolidated, and a goal might be 7 hours or 8 hours. But if we keep doing this, eventually the sleep will fall apart. Keep you in bed 9 hours, it's not going to work, okay? Even if you're gradually getting there, you're not going to become a 9-hour sleeper if you're only sleeping 6, okay? So that's technique number 1. Anything you want to ask me about that?
Yes. So what is it about limiting your, I have an idea, but I'd love to hear you. Why does limiting your time in bed make you actually get more compact sleep? Because it would seem counter that people would think, let me stay in bed longer, try to get more sleep when you're limiting.
It's not the amount of sleep, it's the quality of sleep. And we're basically, as I said, we're stuffing your sleep in a box. So it's strong within those parameters, within those times. And then you creep it back and back and back. And that's the way you get more sleep, but better sleep. So it's not more sleep. You could be like someone in a nursing home. Maybe not a great nursing home. Nobody sleeps more than an hour at a time. Nobody's awake more than an hour at a time. They've fragmented their sleep over 24 hours. And that's not good sleep.
So the sleep restriction works, and is it that you know how long you've been sleeping, so you're trying to make it so you're super tired, that when you sleep, you're actually sleeping through that chunk of time?
It's part of it. We're using the sleep deprivation to make it work. It's true.
Okay.
Now, some people are really afraid of this, and there's an opposite technique that sometimes is helpful, and it's called sleep compression. Oh, you're in bed 9 hours, and you're only sleeping 6? Well, let's do 9 hours tonight and less the next night and less the next night and see what happens. And it'll keep going down until it starts to consolidate. But that's not the way we go, but that could work too. So I have to work with people at based on what they bring me, basically what their mindset is.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. There's so many, but the second one, and really these two are the main techniques that are researched, and again, evidence-based, I'll explain that some more, is stimulus control. It's a little technical. It's an unfortunate term, but the technique isn't. And the idea is the stimuli of the bed control sleep. My bed is where I sleep. My bed isn't where I'm uncomfortable. My bed is not where I roll around all night. And my bed is certainly not my torture chamber, which some people say. So if you can't sleep, after 20 to 30 minutes, you have to get up and do something restful, like reading a book, not screens, because they have too much of that light in your eyes, and you want the melatonin to keep flowing. So usually reading a book, but not a book, not an ebook, for example. It could be listening to music. And we negotiate how to do that. Because years ago, I used to say, do this until your eyes are closing and then get back into bed again. And some patients would say, I never went to sleep again because I felt okay all night. I was reading all night. So I say, well, after 30 minutes, check in with yourself. And if you feeling okay, maybe you had a stomach ache or a headache when you first got out of bed, or you were, anxious, and you're feeling okay, well, try it again. That's enough time. And you may have to do this more than once in a night. And it goes away. When the technique starts to work, you're not getting up all the time. You're not getting up at all. So it works and it stops having to happen. And I've tried this myself. We all have either trouble at the beginning of the night or trouble in the middle of the night getting to sleep. And it's amazing. I don't want to say 100%, but it's amazing how well it works. When you get back into bed, the bed feels different. It's another chance to put yourself to sleep in a more favorable situation.
That's really interesting. Those are the two main ones that you wanted to go over, right?
Those are the more research. I'll tell you what the others were in a minute. Now, the point of research is, well, I have my opinion and you have yours, and we're both going to tell someone what they should do. And a friend of mine said to me, I know what to do. Knows nothing about sleep. Red wine at night. That's the technique. I hope she's not going around telling all her friends that. So it's all based on research, hopefully randomized control studies on these techniques. And it's not just one technique. Years ago, it just was relaxation or transcendental meditation, and they didn't work very well. But that's actually part of my package. But these other two are the most researched and have the most evidence. So you have evidence-based medicine, I hope. I don't think you go to your doctor who just what he happens to think based on having seen some patients. So he has to know what the evidence is in the literature, and they do. But with sleep, you have to do that as well. And other types of psychology, you want evidence-based treatment of your depression. You don't want to just talk about it and hope, well, you better this time. If you're better, you know it. And with sleep, this is 4 to 6 sessions, what I do. Some people do 10 sessions, but we're not talking a long time. Now, would you like to know some of the other techniques?
Yes, share some of the other techniques. I know those are the two big ones.
Two major ones. I would say maybe number 3 is relaxation. So it's not the only thing we do, but it's part of the package. Necessary, but not sufficient, as the math teachers would say, okay? And there's different types. You can try calming down your system all day. Probably some of the things you teach your listeners are very useful. Yoga's great. But I'm talking about something you can employ or deploy on the spot. So the most important one to me is deep breathing. And I have a 30 breath exercise, not 2, not 5, but 30 deep breaths that the person does in bed. Or you can do it before you go to sleep too. Or you can do it when you get out of bed because you can't sleep. But if you are lying there awake, whether it's the beginning or the middle of the night, and it's not time to get up, because you're going to get up after 20 to 30 minutes. There's a few things you do first, like tell yourself some encouraging things, like if I relax, I can sleep. And then you do this exercise. And often you don't get to the 20 or 30 minutes where you have to get out of bed. So that's one. Then there are cognitive ideas. And that is, if I relax, I can sleep. Keeping track of the things that are getting in the way of sleeping, the things that are worrying you, and saying to yourself, not now, not here, not helpful. There's a better time and place. And then often I will have the person establish a journal and use the thing they were worried about as one of the topics in the journal, one of the pages, let's say, in the journal, and to work on it, but not right before bedtime, but on a regular basis. And when you do that, you come up with some ideas based on what's worrying you, and then you leave it for a while, and you go back to that page a few days later, and you look at what you came up with so far, and you say, wasn't I clever? Let me add to it. Where if you hadn't done that, you would have been at the beginning. So those are the main things. I'm trying to think what else I would want to say. Well, light and dark. I mean, we may be running out of time, but the idea of light and dark is you want to get plenty of light during the day. Mm-hmm. And this is especially important for people who have a circadian rhythm component. Their sleep is not where they want it to be. Like, I can't fall asleep, I can't wake up in the morning. Their sleep is moved over, like a jet lag problem. Or more likely elderly, but it could be anyone, has the opposite problem. I fall asleep at 8 o'clock. I wake up too early. And the use of light and dark is very important for that.
So, would it have to be direct sunlight, or I know you mentioned before light boxes. So,
yeah, there's a couple of things. Let's talk about the person who has trouble falling asleep, because that's more likely. It certainly happens with young people, and it happens at any age. I can't fall asleep. And then they might sleep too late. So light boxes, maybe in the morning, but if you can get natural sunlight in the morning, that's just as good. But we can't always get natural sunlight. And the room light is like 300 lux. And the kind of bright sunlight is 10,000 lux or more. So sometimes we use light boxes, but that's not what I'm going to stress today. There's easier things to talk about, and that is not getting too much bright light in the evening, turning off the screens. And we look at evidence. Any electronic screen has lots of light in it. And I'm not going to go into this, but it turns out it's the blue part of the light that keeps us up and turns off melatonin, okay? We want melatonin at night. So some people use a workaround, and that is orange glasses. So here's a pair of orange glasses. These are not the ones that are listed on your website, but this is the color orange I wanted you to see. And what it does is it blocks the blue. So it's called virtual darkness because it doesn't block out everything. It just blocks out the light that's not helpful then. But you wouldn't wear it now. You wouldn't wear it during the day because we want plenty of light. So when I see people running around with orange glasses, I don't get it during the day, even though it's probably fashionable. So on my on your website, you're going to have a listing of 2 types of orange glasses sold on Amazon, probably about $10 each. Maybe when I used to get them, they were $7. Now they might be $15. And if you just wear them for 2 hours, if for someone who has trouble falling asleep, if you have the opposite problem, and that is you're falling asleep too fast, you're falling asleep too early, this is not what we're talking about. This is not for you. We want plenty of light in the evening. So we're just talking about people who have trouble in the evening, and the blue light keeps them up. So we use blue blockers, and that's a good trick. It's kind of instead of melatonin. It produces melatonin. We don't need to take melatonin and the orange glasses. And I'll only say one more thing about this, and that it's been researched. What are the things that cause this problem? Is it TV? Is it computer screen? It turns out that TV is not such a problem because it's far away from you. You're not getting huge amounts of light in your eyes. But if you're watching TV on your computer, which we do these days, then it would be a problem. So if I said, gee, I have to get my email and I have to do this, whip on the orange glasses.
And at night. Mm-hmm.
At night. And that's about 2 hours before bedtime. And there are two kinds. One is a fit over, the two kinds I recommended, and it goes right over your glasses. This one is neither one, but it actually works. And then another one is just the plain one, more like this one, if you don't need glasses.
Right.
So that's important. What else do we need to do?
Oh, and then I had a question about which most people wonder, what is the success rate? From what I understood, CBTi is equally successful as sleep meds in terms of, except for CBTi is a lifelong skill. So
in the short term, but in the long term, it's much more effective than sleep medications. And all sleep medications, when you stop taking them, you stop sleeping. So this is a lifelong thing when it works. So what is the success rate? I kind of changed that question a little bit to say, this is evidence-based. It's not what I do. I'm basing this package on what the research shows for my package. And change it here and there to make it work for you. But let's say Michael Perlis at Penn says 80% of people improve 50% in their presenting problem. Now, that's better than we get for any problem in psychology, by the way. So you have to think about that. Don't think that's nothing. That's wonderful, okay? So do I turn into a marathon sleeper? Probably not. But a decent sleeper, I certainly hope so. And you have the techniques to go back to in the future if and when this problem reemerges.
That's true. I think in that Wall Street Journal article, it said that the people who had CBTi therapy prior to the pandemic fared better sleeping-wise and anxiety-wise throughout this past year.
Okay. Can I give a little tip about how to get that Wall Street Journal article? It was pretty good because in the past I haven't liked most of these articles. So I thought it was very good. And if you go on your cell phone and you say Wall Street Journal Insomnia, you'll get the whole article. If you go on your computer, you won't. It'll say you must subscribe, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, that is a good tip.
So I can do that with almost anything with the Wall Street Journal, but I think most magazines that say, you can't get it, you have to subscribe. And sometimes what I do is I actually copy it from my cell phone and make a copy for myself. Mm-hmm. But you can't do it on your computer. So the smartphone, that's a good tip because I thought that was a pretty good article.
Yeah.
So do you want to know what else we're leaving as tips, or are we out of time?
Take too much of your time. So my last two questions were going to be, I know in general naps are not great, but you had mentioned you can take a little once, maybe advice on the purpose of a nap and then the max amount of time you should take. And then after that, we'll talk about the resources, like your hierarchy of self-help, your thoughts on the self-help books, and then online apps and all that stuff.
So first, naps. A word about naps. I'm not against them completely. There's a place for naps. The best nap is a power nap. It's 10 to 30 minutes. Even 5 minutes helps. If you sleep for more than 30 minutes, you could go into deep sleep, and then it's very hard to awaken yourself. I don't know if it's ever happened to you. I'm like a sore-headed bear for an hour. What good did this do for me? Also, the idea is you're not napping to get more sleep. You're napping to get through the day so you can use the other techniques.
That's probably the most crucial. You're not napping to get more sleep, but to help you get through the day.
And the best time to nap is not too close to the morning and not too close to bedtime. So somewhere in the middle. I mean, it could even be 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. Not usually. It's usually like 2 or 3. if you have a very late bedtime. So in the middle of your sleep cycle, wide of that, by hours each way, you
Mhm.
come up with a time to nap. It could be you don't have to nap. If you don't feel like napping, great. I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying you can, because what if you're just falling asleep here and there and all the wrong times? Then you're not really able to do my program or some of the tips.
And then I want you to go through the hierarchy. So resources, if someone, I know we're going to put it, I'll put it down in the description, but you mentioned before we were talking how self-help is probably the least evidence-based success rate of success. And then there's online apps, and then there's books, right? I mean, books, and then seeing an actual sleep coach, a professional.
Seeing a sleep coach. So I looked through the books, and I like a book that's written by someone who knows the literature, so there's not misinformation. So I kind of like this one lately. It's fairly recent. There's like 3 or 4 books with the same name, one of which I mentioned to you. But this one's a good book. Shelby Harris knows her stuff. So you're going to get good information. And even if you were in therapy, you would refer to the book to enhance it. But years ago, we studied self-help books, and they don't really work well because you need a coach. You don't understand it. You have a question. You need someone to press you to do the things you're supposed to do. You can't half do them. So a lot of self-help books have great information, and it's very hard to use on your own, which doesn't mean don't use it. So I just sent a few pages from one book, I think it's the book I mentioned to you, about nursing mothers and sleep, to a friend of mine, because there was something to tell. So I'm not saying they're useless, okay? And the next step up would be, now we have packaged programs, online programs that there's some evidence, and you can look in the New York Times, and they've studied shut-eye, SHUTI, and sleepio, and there's some research that they help. Do they help as well as in person? Probably not, but for some people, it's very effective, and it'd be a lot less expensive. Then I list a few websites. I had to look into this because it changes all the time. How to find a CBTi therapist, cognitive behavior therapy. The I is very important for insomnia. Not just a CBT therapist. That's great therapy, but unless you specialize, you're never going to get enough focus on the insomnia.
I think that last part you said was extremely helpful. Because there are, even in searching, people think, oh, I just have to find someone who does CBT.
Yeah. And by the way, the New York Times has been a great resource for me over the years. They seem to get it right. So if you just hunt on their website on the computer, New York Times orange glasses, you'll find an article on that. And it happens to be a good one. New York Times shut-eye, New York Times sleepio.
That's helpful. And I'll put all of these resources down below in the description. Dr. Wilson, I don't want to take any more of your time. This has been extremely helpful and informative, and it was such a pleasure to have gotten to meet you via video. And everyone, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always send me a question, but I'm going to put all the resources below. And we'll tune in next time.
Good luck, everybody. Bye-bye.